So I cannot wait for you to experience it with us. It's an amazing journey. Maybe there are Hollywood celebrities or people of influence that have faith, but if they express it, they could be ostracized or marginalized because they have an expression of faith. I think there's probably examples of that. And what should their response be in your mind?
That absolutely is true. That a lot of times when people are outspoken about their faith, they get pigeonholed. So whether they get blacklisted or they get pigeonholed, that can absolutely happen. So there's the expression of being wise. Be wise. Know when to speak and know when to be silent. And to be silent is not a repudiation of what you believe. You still get to live into what you believe. You get to show up in the office or on the set and live out your values without having to speak of them. And then if somebody asks you in a conversation, why are you this way? Then you speak of it in that conversation. If Christianity is an agenda that somebody's pushing, it lacks authenticity. And so actually, the more people that just want to live their faith authentically, the way anybody else wants to live their identity authentically, it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Of how the world today wants to be the champion of people who want to live authentically. Unless you're Christian, then we don't want to hear about that. And
Sort of a double standard. Yeah.
kind of a double standard. And so I think that Christians are finding that place of we have as much right to live authentically as anybody else does, to speak of who we are, to speak of our identities, not as an agenda, but as our reality that means something profound to us. And so we get to put that in dialogue with other people that share that value. And that creates opportunity. That's what we call an inflection point. And when Christians can rethink those paradigms, rethink values, I think we open up the possibility of dialogue and of knowing each other better. I think that a lot of the world, and especially here in Hollywood, I think that people come to Hollywood because of its influence with a lot of agendas. I want to get a movie made about this. And those are never the best movies. Agenda-driven movies are not good stories. Storytelling is you tell the story and you let it affect people the way it's going to affect people. We once showed a film, it was The Visitor. We put Haas Slayman in that film. And they had promised us a West Coast screening. And so I wanted the screening to be here for the constituents of Bel-Air Church. And well, it so happened that Tom McCarthy had also promised his sister, who was an ACLU advocate, because that film was about speaking for, it was illegal immigration, speaking for the voiceless. And so they had promised the ACLU the premiere. So the last minute they said, we have this really unusual thing, but we need to put Bel-Air Presbyterian Church, the home of Ronald Reagan, in the same screening as the ACLU. Okay, and I hosted that conversation.
Right.
So we have an ACLU advocate, we have Haas Slayman, who's Muslim, and we have one of the pastors from Fuller Seminary, a professor from Fuller Seminary, also a pastor. And I'm trying to weave together this conversation. And towards the end of the night, it was so beautiful, and you couldn't have orchestrated this moment any better. Somebody from, it was kind of funny because they sat in different places in the theater, and somebody from the ACLU raised his hand at the end of this conversation, and he said, I get why the ACLU's here. This is our film. We speak for the voiceless. I understand why the actor's here. I have no clue why your Christians are here. Why are you, what does this movie have to do with you?
Right.
And I loved it. I looked down at Paul Pearson, who is a professor, and he'd been a missionary around the world, one of the gentlest spirits you've ever, and I said, Paul, you want to take that one? And Paul said, oh, absolutely. And in this kind, gentle, fatherly voice, he said, this movie that speaks of this one who, as a friend to the friendless, a voice to the voiceless, that's how we see our Lord. And to the extent that we follow him is to the extent that we can say that we're Christian. This movie speaks to us because it speaks of him. And you could hear a pin drop. I don't think the ACLU, with a broad brush, had ever considered Jesus Christ in those terms, to say he is on the same page that you are. You just think that Christians aren't. And that's a wake-up call to Christians, it's to both, right?
Right.
But Christians have to change how we speak of God, how we speak of Christ. If the only thing is that we put another notch on the belt is that we got one more, that's not who Jesus is. Jesus is about loving a person. Right. And so I think that's a long way around answering your question, but it's, there are very wise, incredible people of faith who just do their work and do it with excellence and do it with kindness, and they are in positions of incredible influence.
And I think the idea of civil liberties is something that's not something that would be off-putting to Christians. Obviously, civil liberties is a foundation for loving human beings.
Martin Luther King was he was a pastor of a church.
Right.
And that's, in the modern era, that was a pastor of a church who, in a theological way, said we cannot have inequality. And that's absolutely what the church must embrace.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.